The story follows Curoya, a self-proclaimed overthinking introvert who believes that love makes no sense. He meets with the school's resident beauty, Shiramori, in the literature club room for their usual intense game of Othello, and Shiramori stares at a white game piece with fascination, commenting on how each piece feels like a different life, while Curoya listens and simply does not understand a single word she just said. Realizing she is drifting into nonsensical logic, Shiramori stops and tells him plainly that she is glad he joined the club. She admits that she would probably have become one with the furniture if he hadn't joined the club, because she was the only member before he arrived. Despite its name, the club rarely reads, spending its time playing Othello like a sacred ritual. Curoya complains about pretending to do real club work, but Shiramori, who proudly masters the art of slacking off, shuts him down. She asks how he is fitting in, knowing he is socially hopeless, only for him to ramble about the glory of introversion. Embarrassed by her teasing, he falls silent while secretly admiring her. Shiramori, who is one of the school's top beauties, nicknamed Mother Teresa for her kindness, which only makes Curoya feel she is out of his league. When outsiders gossip about her looks using a nickname she hates, she shrinks, while Curoya burns with anger. Shiramori teasingly distracts him during their game, but he regains focus and wins. Because of this, she vows to defend her title as club president. She then mischievously pushes Curoya into admitting he likes her after relentless teasing. Instead of rejecting him, Shiramori casually suggests they date, and Curoya's brain immediately files for early retirement, causing him to spiral into a full-on nervous meltdown, questioning whether this is some cruel prank. To make things worse, she gives him only 10 seconds to decide, and this activates his panic mode, causing Curoya to blurt out an agreement mid-countdown. But even though it feels completely unreal, he ends up literally pleading with her to date him, and she cheerfully says yes. Just like that, Curoya starts dating the girl he has been hopelessly crushing on forever, yet his mind stubbornly refuses to catch up. And naturally, he plunges into his usual internal monologue again, wondering how a mid-guy like him could land someone as spectacular as Shiramori. But then, remembering he still doesn't understand a thing about love, Curoya immediately starts mentally scolding himself for getting too excited, and starts panicking all over again, convinced he just lost a game that he hasn't even learned how to play. The next day at school, Curoya couldn't stop replaying yesterday's events in his head, and he barely slept, but seeing Shiramori's face today nearly gave him a heart attack. During lunch, his best friend Takia wastes no time teasing him about finally bagging a girlfriend. Takia, effortlessly handsome and a certified social butterfly, frequently skips school to hang out with women far more experienced than him, but despite being polar opposites, Takia and Curoya click like peanut butter and jelly. Takia grills Curoya about how he confessed to Shiramori, only to recoil when he learns she made the first move, and Curoya quickly spills the whole story, admitting that their relationship might be just a trial run, but Takia insists it is more than a trial since Shiramori wouldn't make the first move if she didn't like him. He almost mentions a certain secret about Curoya, but a single glare shuts him up. The cafeteria soon erupts in chatter as Shiramori appears, radiating main character energy, and Takia nudges Curoya to go greet her, but Curoya freezes, refusing to budge like heavy furniture. Finding it hard to believe that she is here for him, he steals a glance at her and in panic dives under the table when she waves, but Shiramori, graceful even in minor embarrassment, pretends to swat away a bug. This makes Curoya's guilt spike, and he tries to convince himself that she must have been waving at someone behind him. Still hiding under the table, Curoya is caught off guard when Shiramori asks if she can sit with him, and he peeks like a scared cat, unable to respond to her question. When she persists, he tries to use Takia as an excuse to shoo her off, but Takia dismantles his defense with a smirk, insisting she join them. Shiramori immediately plops down across from him, and to his horror, asks if she can eat from his food, causing his brain to short-circuit as he wonders if that counts as a lip-lock test run. She even drives him further insane when she asks him to feed her, and after a moment of internal debate, he caves in to her request and decides to feed her. After all, she is his girlfriend. Just as he is about to offer her a bite, a rowdy girl named Anne swoops in, snatching Shiramori away by grabbing her oranges, causing the cafeteria to explode into excited chatter as students gossip and cheer at the sight of two of the four school beauties in a standoff. Meanwhile, Curoya practically melts under the pressure and ducks under the table again, as Anne continues farming Shiramori's oranges while whining about fatigue, leaving Shiramori flustered in a way he has never seen. He can't believe she is the same Shiramori who always draws pleasure from tormenting him. Eventually, the girls leave, and Shiramori glances back at him with sad eyes. But Curoya, now completely lost, wonders why she is looking at him like that. After they leave, Takia returns, feeling sorry that Curoya's romantic moment was interrupted because he had slipped away to give them space, only for some rogue student to ruin the moment. He teases Curoya about missing his chance to be a total heartthrob, but Curoya shrugs, insisting he is not ready to make any big moves yet. Takia sighs, feeling sorry for Shiramori for having such a clueless boyfriend. But even with that, Curoya doesn't understand what he means, and before he can probe further, his phone buzzes with a message from Shiramori, asking for a private chat after school. The cold tone from her text sends a shiver down his spine, and Takia fans the flames further by hinting that he might be in trouble. Curoya spirals, wondering if she already regrets dating him, and his imagination runs wild with breakup scenarios, each one worse than the last. Later, he heads out to meet Shiramori, still spiraling over what happened at lunch, making him worry she might still be in a foul mood. And in the worst case, this entire disaster will end with him aging into an old virgin legend. When he finally walks into the room, he sees Shiramori with her head slightly lowered, which instantly convinces him that he is doomed. Shiramori then admits she is glad he came, but still voices her disappointment at being ignored earlier, explaining that she genuinely worried he would not show up at all. Curoya hastily tries to defend himself, blurting out that he was simply too excited to look her in the face. And after his short explanation, an awkward silence fills the room, as he wonders if what he just said made him sound like a demented creep. Shiramori breaks the silence by thanking him for being honest, and she asks if he thought she was angry. Curoya remains silent, but she sees through him and immediately teases him for thinking about her. After poking at him for a bit longer, she tells him to sit down, and Curoya complies, relieved that he has not been emotionally executed yet. Just as he relaxes, Shiramori shoots him a sharp glance and tells him to sit directly opposite her. But when he does not understand, she stands up and physically demonstrates what she means. Curoya, realizing what her request means, stiffens like a malfunctioning robot and awkwardly shifts his chair, and Shiramori then suggests they play a game of Othello. While playing, she casually asks whether he is embarrassed to be seen with her, but the question completely confuses him, since he feels the opposite should be true. After hesitating, Curoya asks why she even chose him as her boyfriend, and Shiramori clearly enjoys this question far too much. Gathering his courage, he asks if she actually likes him, and despite feeling like a coward, he braces himself for emotional damage, while Shiramori lets him build up expectations before refusing to answer, leaving him frustrated. Declaring that simply telling him would be boring, Shiramori turns the whole thing into a game, promising to answer truthfully if he wins her at one game of Othello. Feeling confident from his recent winning streak, Curoya accepts the challenge without hesitation, but he loses badly due to emotional stress, and Shiramori announces a penalty, even though no such rule existed from the beginning. After mentally scanning for different penalties, she tells him to say that he likes her 10 times, claiming this is the simplest one, but to Curoya, it is the same as telling him to stop breathing. After mentally struggling, he barely manages to mumble it quietly once, but she refuses to accept it, insisting that he say it while looking her in the eye. Feeling frustrated, he blurts it out so loudly that it stuns her, and after saying the first one, he quickly goes through the rest while maintaining eye contact with her, but by the end, even Shiramori looks flustered and impressed that he was able to pull it off. Feeling too embarrassed, Curoya prepares to leave, but she stops him and whispers her true feelings into his ear, causing his brain to immediately shut down. Seeing that her message has the effect she was expecting, Shiramori starts teasing him, leaving him there frozen in shock. And before leaving the room, she tells him that she will wait outside so they can walk home together. The moment she leaves, Curoya's leg turns to jelly as he collapses to the floor and experiences a full mental breakdown, as he cannot believe how easily she dismantled him, yet he finds himself enjoying it. Even though he knows he could never say it in person, he quietly admits how much he loves her, unaware that Shiramori is still nearby and hears everything, leaving her flustered. Later, Curoya finally works up the courage to step outside, where Shiramori is already waiting for him like a background character who spawned exactly where she was supposed to. They start walking together, and Curoya's nerves short-circuit as people turn to stare, whispering and pointing like this, is some kind of public charity event, and he is the featured beneficiary. As if sensing his discomfort, Shiramori engages him in a conversation about his reading habits, and she points out that he keeps returning the books she lends him way too fast, which must mean he is a speed reader. Deciding to have some fun, she lightly teases him, suggesting that maybe he is just rushing through the books so he has an excuse to see her again sooner. Curoya panics internally and denies it immediately, blurting out that the world doesn't revolve around her, but he quickly regrets it, and the moment he sees her expression drop, he realizes he has committed a social crime equivalent to stepping on a Lego barefoot. Shiramori quickly walks ahead of him in silence, making Curoya's anxiety skyrocket, as his brain starts running worst-case scenarios at Olympic speed. Convinced she is about to dump him on the sidewalk like expired milk, he rushes forward and apologizes, explaining very passionately that he returned the books quickly to get her attention. An awkward silence then follows as he tries to come up with more explanations, fearing she might truly dump him. But to his surprise, she breaks into a bright smile, revealing she was only messing with him, causing Curoya, who had already mentally drafted his breakup apology speech, to be left completely flustered. Embarrassed that he fell for her prank so easily, he tries to stomp off like a penguin retreating from battle. But before he can escape, Shiramori grabs the edge of his jacket to stop him. And just then, the whole scenario reminds her of that day 1 year ago when Curoya saved her from an awkward situation. Back then, her friends had invited her to hang out at a karaoke bar, but Shiramori had just gotten a new book and wanted nothing more than to read in peace. However, her friends insisted, saying she could read her silly book later, and even though she was irritated, Shiramori reluctantly agreed, not wanting to be labeled the group's official party pooper. That was when Curoya appeared out of nowhere like a poorly timed microwave and told her that their supervisor wanted to see her. Grateful she didn't have to be forced out to play, Shiramori apologized to her friends and promised to hang out another time. But once they left, Curoya revealed that he had lied to her. When she asked why, he struggled to explain, tripping over his words until he finally confessed that he had overheard their conversation and noticed how uncomfortable she seemed. Shiramori was shocked because she had tried so hard to hide her feelings, but Curoya assured her that her expression didn't give anything away, but he had just imagined how he would feel if someone dismissed him for wanting to read. Annoyed on her behalf, he then went on a full rant, roasting her friends for forcing their plans on her, and as he rambled on, she watched him like an idiot, unable to mutter a word. He only stopped when he realized that he might also have been presumptuous by believing she didn't want to hang out with her friends. But Shiramori immediately admitted that he was right, and she was actually pleased that he stepped in to help her. That was also the day he returned a book he had borrowed just the day before, prompting her to ask if he was a fast reader. And back then, he had also given her the same flimsy excuse he used again today. Recalling it now, Shiramori chuckles softly, and Curoya asks why, but she brushes him off, saying she just remembered something funny. However, judging by her expression, Curoya knows she is teasing him again, but he lets it go and fumbles around for his bicycle key instead. Meanwhile, Shiramori quietly watches her clumsy boyfriend. Thinking about how sweet but clueless he can be at times, and feeling embarrassed, she quickly calms herself down, not wanting him to see her flustered expression. She stops staring at him and quickly walks away, telling Curoya to hurry up. The following day, Curoya still cannot get Shiramori out of his head, and thoughts about her have moved in there rent-free, rearranged the furniture, and possibly changed the locks. He walks through the halls like a malfunctioning zombie, feeling like an imposter in his own life. Because in his mind, Shiramori is clearly meant to be dating a main character, not a mid-background dude like him, who looks like he exists solely to fill space in crowd scenes. Just then, Takia, always perpetually late, strolls in, looking rough like he just survived a dramatic overnight wrestling match with one of his experienced ladies. And when Curoya asks why he is late, Takia casually explains that he crashed at a female friend's house, and they were cooking rice all night. In that moment, Curoya finds himself wishing he had even half of Takia's natural Rizz, or at least the user manual. Then Takia starts teasing him about Shiramori, asking how far they have gone in their relationship. But when he finds out they have not even held hands yet, Takia looks personally offended, so he urges Curoya to step up his game. Curoya defends himself, insisting that they only started dating 3 days ago, and besides, normal humans don't speedrun romance like Takia apparently does. As if summoned by gossip, Shiramori suddenly appears, greeting them cheerfully and immediately asking if they are talking about her. But Curoya denies it instantly, though his face betrays him like a bad lie detector test. He nearly flatlines on the spot when Takia asks Shiramori straight up about the dating thing, and to respond, Shiramori grabs Curoya's hand and affirms that they are dating. But Takia refuses to back down and roasts his friend for being clueless about dating, telling Shiramori to take it easy on him. He also congratulates them, and Shiramori thanks him while Curoya quietly stands there like a background character. The air tenses when Takia suddenly shifts tone and tells Shiramori that he hopes she is serious about dating Curoya, but sensing her discomfort, he quickly laughs it off, saying he was just joking. Since he is clearly the third wheel, he prepares to leave, but not before telling Shiramori to take good care of Curoya. And once Takia leaves, Shiramori comments that he is a good guy, but Curoya has reservations about her point. So she explains that Takia is a good friend for warning her not to hurt Curoya, even if he disguised it as a joke. Curoya knows she is saying it partly for his sake, but he cannot help feeling jealous, and things only get worse when she continues talking about how popular Takia is at school. And by then, Curoya is practically marinating in vinegar and unable to stop himself. He blurts out, asking if Takia is her type. The moment the words leave his mouth, he realizes he has exposed his darkest insecurity in public, and panic sets in as he tries to take it back, fumbling for the right words to use to make it sound less creepy. Shiramori, clearly enjoying this far too much, leans in to tease him again, and she whispers into his ear, assuring him that he is the only one for her right now. The warmth of her breath completely short-circuits his brain, turning him into a weak puddle of jelly, and he crouches down instantly. But before he can recover, Shiramori pulls away. She casually tells him that she will see him after school before walking off like she didn't just release a tsunami inside of him. After she leaves, Curoya replays her words over and over in his head like a broken cassette tape, trying to engrave them into his heart. But the happiness lasts exactly 3 seconds before doubt creeps in, and he starts imagining a future where she eventually turns to handsome guys like Takia. Trying to calm down, he reminds himself that he is probably overthinking again, but his thoughts almost spiral completely out of control, until the sound of the bell snaps him back to reality. And realizing he is late for class change, Curoya darts down the hallway like a homemade version of the Flash. Meanwhile, in the staff room, Takia listens quietly, attempting to look respectful while enduring a soul-draining lecture from his teacher, completely unaware that he has just been dragged into his friend's emotional damage. Later, Curoya is parked in the club room like a forgotten background character while overthinking his relationship with Shiramori, and he keeps trying to convince himself that this isn't some elaborate prank. But what really bothers him is that no one gave him a user manual for what is considered appropriate to do in a trial relationship. Just as he is spiraling further into mental chaos, Shiramori finally walks in and casually apologizes for being late. She explains that she had to change out of her PE uniform, which is apparently enough to short-circuit Curoya's remaining brain cells, and his eyes immediately widen like cartoon saucers when he notices sweat glistening on her nape. Realizing he has been staring, Curoya internally screams and tries to recover, but Shiramori immediately clocks his panic and calls him out, teasing him for clearly imagining some spicy manga scenario, but he quickly denies it, which only makes him look guiltier. An awkward silence falls between them, and Shiramori points out that he looks unusually tense. Deciding to confront his fears head-on, Curoya blurts out that he wants to clarify what they can and can't do in this trial relationship, and hearing this, Shiramori reacts like he just suggested scheduling romance on a spreadsheet. She tells him that they don't need to set such rigid boundaries because it will only make the relationship boring, and she further explains that the real charm of love lies in the anxiety that comes from not knowing what to do and when to do it. She then announces that they are currently in the pre-dating stage of their relationship, prompting her to ask if he knows what it means, and Curoya explains that it is the phase before couples start fulfilling their fan service quota. Soon, their conversation somehow drifts into relationship culture in Western countries, and Shiramori confidently claims that people there express their feelings through signs instead of words. But before Curoya can ask what kind of signs she means, she demonstrates by nudging his leg under the table. Curoya almost astral projects as his soul leaves his body, files a complaint, and considers not returning. He begs her to stop, clearly reaching his system limit, but Shiramori misunderstands completely and assumes he is worried about her dirtying his uniform, so she reassures him that she has already taken off her slippers. Ignoring his protest, she continues, casually asking if he has picked up on any signs yet, while Curoya is too busy buffering to respond. Deciding that her first attempt didn't click, Shiramori escalates by scooting closer and trapping his leg. And at this point, oxygen becomes optional for Curoya as he panics and jerks his chair backward, startling her. She complains and calls him hopeless, while he apologizes for being a complete wuss. And then, in a moment of reckless honesty, he admits that the idea of her doing this with someone else makes him uncomfortable. Shiramori looks genuinely shocked, and Curoya instantly regrets speaking, convinced he just ruined everything by sounding possessive. So he starts panicking, but as usual, Shiramori reveals that she was only messing with him the entire time. And to reassure him, she suggests making their relationship exclusive. This information hits Curoya so hard that all composure immediately leaves his body, and promising she wouldn't act like that with anyone else, she jokingly warns him not to sample other soups. Curoya hurriedly swears loyalty, admitting that dating someone as high-tier as her is a once-in-a-lifetime event for him. But only after the words leave his mouth does he realize he accidentally called her extremely beautiful, so he freezes on the spot. Still, Shiramori, already enjoying herself, begins to tease him sweetly again, and she repeats his words back to him, making him combust internally. Later on, Shiramori casually asks Curoya if he has had a crush on her ever since they met, and the question hits him like a surprise exam. But instead of answering, he pretends not to hear it. Shiramori, unfazed, admits that she never imagined the two of them dating and follows up by asking if he ever expected something like this to happen. And Curoya answers honestly, saying he never even pictured himself dating anyone at all, let alone someone who regularly bends the school's beauty balance just by breathing. This answer seems to please her, because she follows up with an even deadlier question and asks what he likes most about her, causing Curoya to instantly shut that down because he already knows that any answer he gives will be remembered forever and used as emotional ammunition. So he flips the question back at her like a coward. Shiramori, without hesitation, says she likes the fact that he loves her so much, and she repeats it again, slower this time, while watching him mentally combust in real time. Overwhelmed, Curoya tells her to stop, unable to comprehend how she can say things like that so easily without even flinching. She tilts closer and asks if he dislikes her being so blunt, so Curoya panics and clarifies that he does like it, but it just feels unreal since he has never dealt with someone so direct. Shiramori, clearly not done, moves closer, shrinking the distance between them until Curoya's brain almost ceases activity, and she complains that they will be stuck in this awkward trial phase forever if he keeps acting like a frightened chicken. To fix this, she suggests they practice by going on a date, and Curoya's expectations skyrocket, already imagining something elaborate and dramatic, only for reality to gently punch him when they simply start walking home together. He is visibly disappointed, but Shiramori insists that this still counts as an after-school date and asks whether he is unhappy to be out with her. Seeing his reaction, she wastes no time teasing him again, fully enjoying his misery, and as they walk side by side, she naturally draws attention from everyone around them. As heads turn and whispers follow, Curoya's anxiety climbs with every step, and he finds it ridiculous that she attracts this much attention simply by existing in a public space. But beneath all the panic, he cannot deny that he likes being the one walking next to her, even if it feels like he accidentally wandered into the wrong film set. She snaps him out of his thoughts when she casually suggests they try holding hands, and his reaction genuinely surprises her, because he freezes like she just asked him to rearrange the laws of physics. Shiramori reminds him that they are dating and that holding hands is extremely normal. She casually adds that he can also farm a few more censored privileges, which immediately overloads his brain, and she wastes no time teasing him further about it before stretching out her hand and urging him to hold her. Curoya tries to say something slick before taking her hand, but he ends up sounding like a broken gong, and eventually he gives up and reaches for her hand. The moment their hands connect, Shiramori squeezes his hand tightly and admits that she has been looking forward to holding hands on their first date. Curoya feels warmth spread through him almost instantly, and watching her smile like that makes him painfully aware of how much he likes her. He then starts wishing they could stay like this forever, and he also hopes they can move on to the next stage as full-on lovers. Not long after, they arrive at a bookstore, and Curoya finds himself quietly enjoying the sight of Shiramori browsing through the shelves. He earnestly wishes Shiramori could always smile so brightly, but that peaceful mood collapses the moment they step into the young adult section, and his expression darkens instantly when he spots a particular book sitting on the shelf. Shiramori notices the shift in his mood and asks what is wrong, but Curoya ignores her and reaches for the book instead. The moment he holds it, he breaks out in cold sweat as he stares at the cover, realizing a piece of his past he had carefully buried has resurfaced at the worst possible time. The truth is that Curoya authored and published this book 3 years ago, in middle grade, and back then, he was still a hopeful online writer posting stories late at night with dreams that were far bigger than his confidence. Against all odds, one of his works suddenly went viral, and his inbox exploded with messages from publishers who suddenly remembered his existence. Feeling like the universe had finally acknowledged him, Curoya accepted one of the offers and was assigned an editor from a well-known publishing house. And at first, everything went suspiciously well. Even the editor praised his writing non-stop, hyping him up like he was the next literary messiah, and every meeting left Curoya floating several inches above the ground, convinced he was finally on the right path. Finally, his book was published, and he waited for success to roll in, but reality showed up uninvited and the book did not sell, so the company quietly decided to discontinue his work. Still clinging to hope, Curoya tried to pitch another story, but the editor suddenly turned colder than an unread message and told him they would reach out if his next work gained traction online, which translated loosely to good luck out there. Confused and hurt, Curoya could not understand how someone who praised him so passionately could switch up so fast, and looking for answers, he spoke to another writer, from whom he learned the ugly truth that this particular editor was infamous for showering writers with compliments, while doing zero actual editing, and abandoning them the moment things went south. Something snapped inside Curoya after learning the truth, and he stopped updating his online novels entirely, despite readers reaching out and asking where he went. From then on, he lost all trust in praise and convinced that kind words are just empty noise. He packed up his dream of becoming a writer and shoved it into emotional storage, where it collects dust. Back in the present, as his mind spirals through the past, Shiramori's voice pulls him back to reality, as she shows him the book, having found his name on it, and gently asks if he is really the author. One look at his face confirms it for her, but the moment he realizes she might read it, oxygen becomes optional for him, and his body gives up before his brain can respond. When he wakes up, he finds himself resting on Shiramori's lap, which immediately sends his soul scrambling back into his body, and he jerks upright in panic, apologizing for worrying her, but Shiramori calmly tells him that he can trust her. Cornered by her sincerity, Curoya finally gives in and explains everything about the book and how badly it all ended, but mid-rant, he starts roasting himself out of habit, calling himself useless and naive, but Shiramori cuts him off instantly. She tells him she read the book and that it is one of her favorites, but this does absolutely nothing to reassure him, because his brain immediately files it under suspicious compliments. She repeats herself, more firmly this time, explaining that she never lies about books and admits that it has some clumsy parts, but she genuinely likes the story and says she became a fan of his writing. For the first time in years, the weight sitting on Curoya's chest finally loosens, and he believes that these words are Shiramori's true feelings. Playing the role of an enthusiastic fan, Shiramori stretches out her hand and says she will support him as a writer from now on. Hearing this unties something deep inside him, and before he realizes it, tears spill out as the color slowly returns to a world he thought had gone permanently gray. After the emotional roller coaster finally settles, Curoya reassures her that he is fine, and as they prepare to continue their date, he spaces out, worrying that he has completely burned his girlfriend with his emotional baggage. Shiramori snaps him back to reality by grabbing his arm firmly and telling him to smile, but he forgets how breathing works as the space between them takes a personal vacation, and two very important plot cushions make an unexpected appearance. Seeing how hard she is trying to cheer him up, Curoya decides to stop overthinking and smiles, telling her they can continue their date. Shiramori immediately lights up and starts deciding where to go next, and in that moment, Curoya feels strangely at peace, knowing that no matter how dark things get again, she will always be there to pull him back into the light. The next day, Curoya's overthinking brain does a full-on gymnastics routine as he waits anxiously for Shiramori to text him because she usually messages him first every day. But after their date last night, she hasn't sent him any messages. His brain spirals into madness, wondering why she hasn't texted him, and fearing he might have done something to upset her. He decides to text her an apology first, but the instant he hits send, Shiramori calls him, asking why he apologized out of nowhere. Curoya explains he did it because she has not sent him any messages after their date yesterday, and as usual, she seizes the opportunity to roast him for thinking about her the whole day. Later, she casually explains that she was busy reading a new book and forgot he existed for a bit. She continues teasing him for being so clingy, and no matter how hard he tries to defend himself, he realizes he is completely outmatched, but he feels a small victory when she admits she was actually worried after reading his apology. His happiness is immediately overshadowed when she asks him to guess what she's doing, and his eyes widen the instant he hears a splash, realizing that she is apparently doing community service in the bathroom. She teases him that her clothes took an early retirement, and Curoya tries to remain calm since he can't see anything, but naturally, Shiramori switches to video to give him a teaser. She shows him a scene that relies heavily on his imagination, causing Curoya's soul to exit the premises. Shiramori bursts into laughter, revealing it was just her elbow positioned in a suspiciously suggestive way to fool him. He pleads for mercy, warning that her phone might defy gravity and make the camera politely look where it shouldn't, but she grins, declaring that such a view might knock him out from excessive nosebleeds. Just as Curoya tries to hang up, Shiramori mischievously asks if he wants to see the director's cut, but he assumes she is joking and tells her to cut it out. But she insists, reminding him that he is her boyfriend after all, and his brain immediately starts buffering, trying to calculate if inspecting the cargo is appropriate, and he continues spiraling, forgetting that oxygen is not optional. Finally, Shiramori breaks the tension, already high enough to power a small city, by laughing and claiming she was only messing with him. After bursting his bubbles, she steps out of the tub and teases that he missed his chance by taking too long to answer. But just when he thinks it is over, the universe seems to agree with his pain, and she slips, causing her phone to defy gravity. Shiramori freezes as the camera prioritizes her assets, and Curoya's brain loses signal entirely as he stares like a deer caught in headlights. She tries to end the call, but the water on the screen, choosing to be public enemy number 1, refuses to cooperate, forcing Curoya to finally remember how breathing works, and he quickly ends the call. He pants for air like he just survived the apocalypse, hoping Shiramori is okay after such a chaotic moment, and he quickly texts her an apology, promising not to tell anyone about it. She texts him back, asking if he saw everything, and he quickly replies that he saw nothing, but she refuses to believe him and tells him to prepare for her revenge. Curoya is shocked to hear this and begins to wonder how she plans to get back at him, because given her track record, he is fairly certain that she will choose violence. After school the next day, Curoya heads home, proud of himself for successfully avoiding Shiramori the entire day like a stealth mission gone right. But the universe humbles him the moment he reaches his house to find Shiramori casually waiting outside like she pays rent. She greets him cheerfully, explaining that she has come to inspect his bookshelf since he saw hers last night. Curoya panics internally and hurriedly explains that she cannot go inside because his parents are not home to supervise any playdates. But Shiramori teases him, asking if his imagination is sprinting ahead of reality again. After a little persuasion, he invites her into his room, and Shiramori goes into full inspection mode, while Curoya reassures himself that he has nothing questionable lying around. But his confidence lasts exactly 3 seconds, when he suddenly remembers one book she absolutely must not see. Apparently, on the first day they met, they were both reading the same book, and Shiramori accidentally took his copy, and Curoya, like a certified creep, kept her copy at home instead of returning it. As Shiramori's hand inches closer to the forbidden section, Curoya desperately points out a completely unrelated book, hoping to distract her, and it works briefly. But Shiramori quickly notices his suspicious behavior and asks if he is hiding something. He denies it, but his panicked expression only fuels her curiosity, so she ignores his increasingly desperate attempts to redirect her attention and continues searching until she finds the book. Just as she reaches to pull it out, she suddenly slips for no apparent reason, and like something straight out of a low-budget K-drama, Curoya lunges to catch her. But physics takes the day off, and they both somehow end up landing on the bed, which is like 1,000 meters away from the bookshelf. They freeze in that position far longer than necessary, and Curoya worries it might be uncomfortable for her, only to notice that Shiramori looks entirely relaxed, as if she is waiting for someone to turn off the lights. Before any censored developments can occur, reality crashes the party when Curoya's mother returns home, and her voice echoes through the house as she climbs the stairs, asking why there is an extra pair of shoes at the entrance. Panicking, he shoves Shiramori under the duvet like a folded document, begging her to stay still, and then awkwardly asks her to stick close to him like gum so it looks like he is alone. As she edges closer, Curoya becomes painfully aware of two very important plot cushions, and his brain immediately starts buffering, refusing to process anything. Just as his mother reaches the door, Shiramori pops her head out, saying there is no need to hide, but Curoya shuts that idea down instantly, insisting he wants to introduce her to his parents properly, and she reluctantly agrees to hide again. A tense silence fills the room until his mother enters and asks about the shoes, so Curoya lies through his teeth, claiming a male friend stopped by and is conveniently in the bathroom. His mother accepts this without question and tells him to offer his friend tea before casually announcing she has to step out again. The moment the door slams shut, Shiramori bursts out, gasping for air, and immediately starts teasing him mercilessly. Curoya regrets every life choice that led to this moment, knowing he handed her unlimited ammunition by panicking so dramatically, and he briefly wishes he could astral project. But Shiramori suddenly apologizes, explaining that she is happy he tried so hard to protect her reputation, and she also thanks him for always looking out for her. Hearing this makes Curoya happy, and realizing she is thinking seriously about their future, he gathers his courage and asks her out on a proper date, which she happily accepts and suggests checking out a newly opened cafe nearby. Just as Curoya starts to relax, Shiramori casually pulls out the book that caused the entire disaster earlier, and he visibly shrinks. She mentions she owns a copy too and asks why he tried to hide it. Seeing that she hasn't connected the dots yet, Curoya desperately tries to usher her out of the house, but Shiramori immediately clocks it and reveals that the book is actually hers, causing Curoya's brain to short-circuit as he searches for words to explain it without sounding like a total doofus. Sensing his panic, Shiramori calmly tells him there is no need to hide it because she took his copy on purpose back then, and this revelation causes his entire system to crash, leaving him buffering from complete network failure. Recovering from the temporary network outage in his brain, Curoya finally asks why, and Shiramori casually says she did it on a whim, but deciding to be honest, she explains that seeing him holding the same book that day felt like fate, which immediately activated her inner soap opera addict. She admits she took it hoping something dramatic would happen like in those over-the-top soap operas, but nothing happened in the end, mostly because Curoya is a wuss. When he asks if she was expecting him to make a move, she laughs it off and refuses to answer, but her expression screams that his cowardice ruined a perfectly good K-drama moment. Suddenly, Shiramori flops onto the bed and casually reduces her clothing budget, announcing that they need to create an event because, apparently, the manga universe is running low on plot. She invites him to sit next to her, and he freezes, wondering what she plans to do, but with a little more persuasion, he agrees and sits next to her, and Shiramori inches closer, forgetting why boundaries were invented. As his brain struggles to process the aggressive signals, she suddenly pushes him onto the bed, breaking several social laws and at least 2 internal organs. She claims they are just taking a nap, but the situation is doing everything except letting him breathe properly, and ignoring his protests, she asks if he likes her, casually threatening to break up if he doesn't answer, which sends his soul briefly into witness protection. Panicking at the thought of ending up an old Virgo, he admits that he likes her, but she demands enthusiasm, forcing him to scream it like he is confessing to a crime. Satisfied, she lies back down smiling, while he complains about her teasing as if he hasn't accepted this fate already. And a few moments later, Shiramori yawns, telling him she wants to take a nap, so Curoya tries to give her some space, but she tugs at him, telling him to stay. As they settle into nap, Shiramori casually suggests that next time he should try saying he loves her without wobbling like jelly on a plate, and knowing resistance is useless, Curoya simply agrees to work harder. A few moments later, they fall asleep, and Curoya wakes up first, not knowing when he drifted off. He gently shakes Shiramori, but she doesn't budge, so he lies back down and ends up watching her sleep instead. Suddenly, he starts feeling guilty for always making her take the lead in their relationship. Touching her hand lightly, he apologizes for being such a slowpoke, and after expressing his happiness that she is his girlfriend, Curoya quietly thanks her. Shiramori stirs with a faint smile, and the sheer cuteness nearly sends Curoya into retreat, but gathering all his courage, he promises to do better and win her heart properly, even though she already conquered him without effort. Right on cue, an alarm clock rings, destroying the mood like a villain with perfect timing, and Curoya panics when he realizes it is almost dinner time, meaning his parents will be home soon, so he hurriedly wakes Shiramori and insists she head out immediately. As she prepares to leave, Shiramori doesn't forget to tease him, telling him to delete any censored photos he might have taken during her nap. But before Curoya can deny or protest, she bolts out the door, leaving him stunned. While walking home, Shiramori can't stop thinking about what Curoya said to her because, apparently, she heard the whole thing while pretending to sleep. Deep down, she is already hopelessly into him, but she doesn't want him to know yet because she wants him to fall to the point of being her personal simp before she can show her true feelings. Thinking about how interesting things are looking, Shiramori happily looks forward to tomorrow. The next day, Takia hunts for gossip from Curoya about his date with Shiramori, clearly expecting fireworks, but he is disappointed when he learns that Curoya didn't even make it past the first stage. Takia then speculates that Shiramori might have been expecting a kiss, and Curoya nearly chokes, because the very idea sounds like a crime against humanity to him. He refuses to believe it, but then he remembers how she looked yesterday, and suddenly that impossible thought starts creeping in. But realizing Takia has planted a forbidden seed in his brain, he frantically tries to pop those invisible thought bubbles like a kid in a stress relief toy aisle. Then Shiramori's voice rings through the cafeteria, causing Curoya to stiffen instantly, and he wants to sneak a glance at her, but his courage will lose a staring competition with a mustard seed. After preparing himself mentally, he finally dares to look, only to regret it immediately when she blows him a kiss, and Takia can't resist making things worse, suggesting that Shiramori is simply being forward about her desires. Curoya's brain immediately spirals down a rabbit hole of wild fantasies, all courtesy of Takia's evil seed, but he soon snaps back to reality and aggressively bursts the thought bubbles while Takia laughs, as if he has just won a cruel little game. After causing all that emotional damage, Takia leaves abruptly, leaving him to fend for himself. Curoya tries to stop him, but Takia ignores him, while Shiramori quietly observes them from behind, already plotting her next move. Later, Curoya is alone in the club room, still wrestling with the fantasies planted in his brain by his evil spawn friend, and he doesn't notice Shiramori quietly watching from the door, with a mischievous chuckle escaping as she prepares to tease him. She walks in, immediately asks what he is thinking about, but Curoya brushes her off, and though she can see how uneasy he is, she doesn't press further. Just as he begins to relax, she pulls out her ammunition, reminding him that they're alone and subtly bringing up their date from last night. Curoya starts thinking about Takia, urging him to make a move, and his brain immediately spirals down fantasy lane. But he is so caught up that he doesn't even hear Shiramori talking to him, and he only snaps back to reality when she cups his face, squishing it like tofu. She then asks what he is thinking about, but he refuses to answer, so she presses harder, squishing his face even more aggressively, before casually revealing that she overheard his conversation with Takia earlier, and out of nowhere, she asks if he wants to sample her lips. Curoya's brain immediately short-circuits on hearing this, and like a dummy, he asks her to clarify, prompting Shiramori to spell it out for him. But even then, his brain continues to buffer, so she decides to take matters into her own hands and leans in closer. As her lips draw near, the only thing running through Curoya's head is the realization that he is absolutely not ready for this level of content, but he at least manages to close his eyes, bracing himself for impact like a soldier going into battle. Unfortunately for him, Shiramori smirks and reveals that she was just messing with him, instantly inflicting critical emotional damage. As he struggles to recover from the devastation, Shiramori suggests that he should counterattack, explaining that if he keeps acting like a total wuss, she will just keep winning every time. Curoya feels like the teasing today has crossed several international borders, so the idea of a counterattack sounds like a priceless treasure, and Shiramori ups the difficulty by telling him he can do anything he wants, clearly confident that even an ostrich has more courage than him. Curoya then decides to gamble, and he reaches out to touch her face, but Shiramori grabs his hand and presses it against her cheek, refusing to let him back out. This single move convinces Curoya that she might actually be serious, and as he leans closer, the tension almost blows a fuse, but at the very last second he chickens out and squishes her face instead. This time it is Shiramori, whose brain completely logs out in confusion, and Curoya proudly declares that he got his revenge, leaving her speechless. But he suddenly breaks down, admitting he only stopped because he didn't actually dare to go through with it. Shiramori immediately bursts into laughter, calling him a full-blown drama queen, admitting that she genuinely thought he was going to do it. But Curoya, now traumatized and allergic to tricks, refuses to believe her. And as he turns away in embarrassment, Shiramori watches him quietly, secretly wishing she had pushed just a little harder. The next scene opens with Curoya trembling on his knees in front of Shiramori like a man being interrogated for crimes against romance. But just a few minutes earlier, the two of them were casually hanging out in the literature club room. And the chaos started when Shiramori randomly asked Curoya what he considered cheating, instantly sending him into survival mode, as he wondered why this felt like a trap. She explains that she asked because Anne and her boyfriend recently broke up due to having different views on cheating. She then asks whether going to a mixer could be considered cheating, and Curoya, as if auditioning for the national mascot of green flags, replies, saying it is a boyfriend's duty to avoid any situation that could upset his girlfriend. Shiramori is stunned by his answer and immediately starts teasing him, pointing out how he somehow manages to sound cool despite having an ego the size of a grain of rice. She admits that she is actually pleased with his response and praises him for being a walking green flag. She even adds that once people realize how decent he is, he might end up becoming a hot commodity on Temu, but Curoya doubts her, and Shiramori insists that he probably already has a few admirers lined up somewhere. He tries to defend himself, but she insists, so he decides to give her his phone for inspection. Shiramori is stunned and quickly refuses, saying it makes her feel like an obsessive girlfriend, but she takes it when Curoya insists, and she then checks his phone, realizing a loser like him probably couldn't cheat even if someone handed him the Cheating for Dummies handbook. In fact, without Shiramori's existence, his contact list would be limited to his parents and Takia. But just as Curoya starts feeling like a trophy, Shiramori's fingers accidentally tap on a strange app with a warning label, causing Curoya's soul to leave his body, and he drops to his knees in front of her, hence the initial scene. Digging deeper into the app, she discovers his favorite genre involves married women making questionable life choices. Curoya pleads his case, admitting that he has a thing for blue-screened novels and insisting that reading them doesn't count as cheating, but Shiramori disagrees, arguing that while he may not have acted on it physically, his mind has already committed the crime. Curoya desperately tries to explain himself, as his carefully built green flag persona crumbles right in front of him. Suddenly, Shiramori bursts into laughter, revealing that she was just messing with him the entire time. She admits that she enjoys seeing him miserable, and Curoya mentally logs out for the day, completely exhausted by her antics. Later, he tries to snatch his phone back, but Shiramori immediately starts reading the novel instead, and to torture him further, she starts comparing her plot armor with the character of the novel. Curoya's eyes even wander to check them out, and the jiggle budget exceeds his expectations, but Shiramori catches him staring and teases him about it, causing him to panic. She starts rambling about some very questionable things, almost giving him a heart attack, before realizing that she is only reading lines from the novel. To his complete shock, she starts reading them out loud, even acting them out, and as her clothes prepare for early retirement, Shiramori starts farming her oranges, causing Curoya to lose his remaining composure. He begs her to stop, but by then she is too deep into character, and as the tension in the room skyrockets, Curoya's brain almost crashes from overload, so he snatches the phone from her, instantly putting an end to the torture. She tries to tease him for getting so flustered, clearly enjoying every second of his misery. But this time, Curoya actually snaps back, scolding her for acting completely unhinged and explaining that he is already embarrassed just listening to it, let alone witnessing a live performance. He then questions why she acts so brazenly when she is supposed to be the one most embarrassed. Suddenly, her expression darkens as she snaps back at him, and after lashing out, she mutters some flimsy excuse and dashes out of the room before he can stop her. Curoya decides to head home, but he runs into Anne, and she asks him if Shiramori has already gone home. Curoya says yes, wondering why she is waiting for him and how she even knows his name. But after hearing that Shiramori has left for the day, Anne is oddly pleased and grabs his hand, inviting him to karaoke. Moments later, the two of them arrive at a karaoke bar, and while Anne handles the booking, Curoya is already fighting for his life internally as this is his first time at karaoke with a girl, which immediately sends him into a moral crisis as he starts wondering if this counts as cheating. Once they are inside the private booth, Anne sits way too close, instantly putting Curoya on edge, and his brain starts connecting dots that don't exist, as he wonders if she is actually trying to ask him out. His soul nearly leaves his body when she suddenly places her hand on his and says she has something important to ask him, immediately convincing him that this is a classic sign of an incoming love confession. His thoughts spiral as he wonders how to explain this situation to his girlfriend without sounding guilty. He snaps back to reality when Anne calls his name, and she stammers, desperately trying to think of the least disastrous way to ask her question. After struggling for a while, she finally asks him if Takia has a girlfriend, and the question hits him like truck gun, leaving him speechless. But while Curoya is relieved that she is not confessing to him, he is also oddly disappointed in her taste in men. Anne immediately notices him spacing out, and she loudly urges him to answer, so he tells her that Takia doesn't have a girlfriend, making her face light up so fast it is basically a spoiler. Watching her reaction, Curoya realizes she is incredibly easy to read and asks if that was all she wanted to know. Trying to avoid embarrassment, Anne puts on a tough face, claiming she is just curious, but Curoya bluntly asks if she likes Takia, and Anne immediately explodes, cursing him while denying it with every word she can think of, but her reaction alone fully convinces him that he is right. After ranting, she finally calms down, but Curoya keeps staring as if looking into her soul, and this makes her so flustered that she covers her face in shame, asking how he figured it out. Curoya is pleased with himself, especially now that he is seeing a side of Anne that completely contradicts her usual bold and carefree vibe at school. She fumbles with her fingers as she tries to downplay her feelings for Takia, but from her explanation alone, Curoya can tell she genuinely likes him. He then curiously asks if she actually knows Takia, but Anne says she barely knows him. Curoya wonders what Anne means, but she has no intention of explaining, so he decides not to push it. But this creates an awkward silence so thick it could be used as soundproof padding. And Anne sits there like a background character waiting for a player to trigger the next dialogue option. When it finally dawns on her that Curoya has absolutely no plans to ask anything, she launches straight into the story, explaining how she met Takia a week ago, and what follows is a long tale packed with unnecessary side quests. But after listening patiently, Curoya summarizes the entire thing in 3 seconds flat. Basically, Anne's ex-boyfriend was harassing her on the street, and Takia swooped in like a knight in shining armor. Anne adds that after saving her, Takia told her to choose the guys she dates wisely, and somehow her dumb brain translated it into a personal message telling her to choose him. Since she didn't know Takia well enough to confirm this fantasy, she decided to ask one of his friends for help, and unfortunately for everyone involved, that friend is Curoya. She suddenly takes his hand in hers, desperately begging him to help, but Curoya reminds her that he is the worst possible person to ask for relationship advice, ranking somewhere below broken fortune cookies. She tells him that it is painfully obvious he has zero Rizz, but she can only rely on him since he is the only friend of Takia she knows. Curoya feels mildly offended hearing her roast him like that, but still, he doesn't want to get involved in this mess. Despite his resistance, Anne continues pleading until he finally agrees, warning her not to blame him when everything explodes in her face like a pressure cooker. Anne thanks him happily and casually reveals that she planned to pummel him into amnesia if he had refused. Before proceeding to enjoy her karaoke, she sternly warns him not to tell anyone about their conversation, not even Shiramori, and Curoya agrees with the enthusiasm of someone already planning to do the exact opposite with a megaphone. The moment he gets home, Curoya immediately calls Shiramori and tells her everything, and after listening, she calmly asks why he told her, despite promising Anne he wouldn't say a word. Curoya explains that it didn't feel right to keep things from his girlfriend, especially since he might be spending more time around Anne. Shiramori then reassures him that she is not a petty girlfriend and guesses that his guilt comes from the cheating conversation they had earlier that day. She admits that she finds his self-reporting adorable and starts teasing him for being completely head over heels for her. Not wanting to prolong the roasting session, Curoya simply agrees with everything she says, and she also promises to cheer him on during his accidental Cupid mission for Anne. So Curoya vows to do his best, despite having zero qualifications. Suddenly, Her tone turns cold as she expresses her dissatisfaction that he went to karaoke with another girl. Curoya tries to defend himself, but her real issue is that he shared a first with someone else instead of her. Feeling jealous, she demands a date of her own, and Curoya suggests another casual after-school hangout. But Shiramori insists on a proper date, and Curoya immediately agrees, even though he has no idea what a real date actually involves. Meanwhile, Shiramori is just excited to reclaim a first with him, especially after another girl stole his karaoke milestone. For their first proper date, they agree to meet in front of the station the following day, and just before hanging up, Shiramori casually tells Curoya to wear something nice, but that night, he panics while thinking about what to wear, and by morning, his nerves are already doing backflips. Later, as he heads toward the meeting point, his thoughts spiral non-stop, ranging from hoping he doesn't look like a complete clown to wondering what Shiramori will wear. Right then, Shiramori shows up looking like $1 million, effortlessly turning heads as usual, and he quietly admires her beautiful dress, silently hoping that he looks at least decent enough to stand next to her without lowering her value. And Shiramori, clearly sensing his panic, reassures him that he looks good, which helps him recover just enough to function. After complimenting him, she waits expectantly for him to return the favor, but Curoya stares at her like a confused zombie who just woke up in the wrong anime. She practically has to beg him to comment on her outfit, and the only thing he manages to say is that her dress is nice, dishing her instant emotional damage. But after some persuasion from her, he finally blurts out that her outfit is so cute he can barely breathe, instantly reviving her mood and earning a very satisfied smile. Soon, they head out, planning to stop by a karaoke place near the station, but Shiramori suddenly worries they might run into someone familiar. After thinking it over, she suggests hopping on a train, and before Curoya can overthink it, they are already boarding the train. Inside the train, all he can focus on is how nice she smells, and he is too busy running simulations in his head about how to hold her hand that he doesn't notice her calling his attention to the scenery outside. As if reading his mind, Shiramori casually asks if he wants to hold hands, but Curoya fumbles so badly trying to answer, so she grabs his hand instead, and he immediately panics about people watching, so she shifts their hands to hide them between their bodies. Unfortunately for Curoya, this causes his hand to brush dangerously close to forbidden territory, sending his soul into chaos, and he tries to move away. But the sudden motion sends aggressive signals to Shiramori until she tells him to stop fidgeting. She then leans in and whispers teasingly, pushing his mental stability to the brink, even suggesting he hide his hand somewhere far more dangerous. But Curoya is saved only when their stop is announced, leaving him both relieved and strangely disappointed. As they prepare to leave the train, he continues to tremble, even lagging a bit behind when Shiramori heads out. After getting off the train, she drags him into a women's clothing store, and Curoya nearly astral projects when a staff member accidentally catches him lingering near the lingerie section. But he is rescued when Shiramori calls him over to help her choose outfits, though he immediately worries because his fashion sense is non-existent. As if actively trying to end him, she steps out in a swimsuit held together by pure hope, almost costing him the ability to breathe. When she asks what he thinks, his brain completely forgets that oxygen is not optional. As she heads back in to try another outfit, Curoya spots a group of classmates nearby and instantly panics. But before they can say anything, he pulls a classic Houdini, fearing they might start spreading rumors about Shiramori at school. Meanwhile, Shiramori prepares an even more daring outfit to torment him further, but Curoya sneaks over and whispers for her to stay inside for now. But she doesn't hear him and peeks out instead. At that exact moment, gravity plays Cupid, and they crash to the floor together in a perfect K-drama-style accident, and the loud impact draws the attention of the store clerk and the classmates he was desperately trying to avoid. They remain frozen in the same position for far longer than what should be legally allowed, while a small crowd gathers outside the dressing room, with concerned voices asking if the person inside is okay. Meanwhile, Curoya's mind is racing as he desperately tries to calculate the safest escape route from this questionable situation without making things worse. Unfortunately, the changing room is about as spacious as a lunchbox, so even the slightest movement causes her wardrobe budget to shrink, earning him immediate suspicion from Shiramori, who questions why he is shifting around so much. She tells him to stop moving, but when the store clerk's voice rings out from outside the curtain, asking about the noise. Shiramori shoves Curoya off her like he is a disposable item and pops her head out to apologize to the clerk, while Curoya tries to figure out how to escape without being seen. Unfortunately, the view from behind is so devastating that his brain refuses to function, as the fabric's morale drops dangerously close to zero. Panicking, Curoya decides he has to fix Bikini Bottom before things escalate further, but he stops halfway, realizing there is a chance he might touch something he absolutely shouldn't. Still, with no other options left, he proceeds blindly, trying to fix SpongeBob SquarePants, but he fails to locate the string, and the constant grazing makes Shiramori tremble. She somehow manages to keep a straight face while dealing with the crowd outside, all while Curoya causes absolute chaos behind the curtain, fighting a losing battle against women's clothing. Not long after surviving the cursed dressing room incident, the two finally make it outside, and Curoya recalls how Shiramori managed to distract the clerk just long enough for him to escape, though she ends up leaving the store without buying anything. Outside, he notices that Shiramori seems slightly annoyed and immediately feels his soul sink as she asks why he was grazing around in the changing room. He frantically apologizes, explaining the whole string situation, but she asks why he even came into the room in the first place, and he admits it was because he spotted their classmates nearby, causing him to panic. Curoya apologizes again, fully convinced he has ruined their first real date beyond repair, but to his surprise, Shiramori suddenly scolds him for being way too serious, and then she breaks into a smile, revealing she lied earlier about not wanting to be seen. She grabs his hand and explains that she only did it because she wanted them to go somewhere farther for their date. Curoya is stunned, and before he can process it, she teasingly adds that she still hasn't forgiven him for the grazing incident, but she might consider it if he helps her have fun. From there, the rest of the date surprisingly goes smoothly, and Curoya feels a massive sense of relief as Shiramori's mood improves significantly. After resting for a bit, they consider karaoke again, but Shiramori decides to skip it, claiming she doesn't enjoy singing and her voice usually sounds like a frog with a fever. As they head toward another store, she suddenly freezes upon spotting a girl across the road, and Curoya immediately notices the shift, making him wonder if they know each other. The young girl, Kazumi, soon crosses over, cheerfully greeting Shiramori, and Curoya can't help but notice how similar they look. When Kazumi asks who he is, Shiramori explains that they are somewhere between friends and lovers, instantly leaving Curoya confused. She then introduces Kazumi as a relative in middle grade, which confuses Curoya even more since they have different surnames. He even senses an odd tension between them, even though they aren't hostile to each other. Shiramori then asks why Kazumi is alone, and she explains that her mom is nearby, prompting her to ask if Shiramori wants to meet her, but Shiramori refuses, saying they need to head back soon, even though they were just about to enter another store seconds ago. She hurriedly says goodbye to Kazumi and pulls Curoya away before he can ask anything. They walk in silence for a while, making Curoya increasingly uneasy, until he finally asks if she is okay, and Shiramori apologizes for worrying him, calmly explaining that Kazumi is her half-sister, and they share the same mom. This revelation left Curoya processing yet another unexpected reveal on what was supposed to be a simple date. It also reminds him of another moment from half a year ago, when he had casually asked Shiramori how she got into reading, and the expression on her face now is exactly the same one she wore that day. It was the kind of look that pretends everything is fine, while quietly carrying a whole library of emotional damage. Back then, she had explained that her love for books began after her parents divorced when she was 4, and after the divorce, she ended up living with her father, but every day she cried, asking when she could see her mother again. Her father never got angry, but he would apologize with a sad expression, which somehow hurt her even more, and it made her feel like she was doing something wrong, so to keep her father from feeling sad, she started reading picture books to distract herself. Over time, she moved on to harder books, and as the crying stopped, her father slowly started smiling more, and seeing that smile made her feel like she had done the right thing, so she kept reading, turning it into a habit. After telling him this story back then, she noticed how worried Curoya looked and immediately forced a smile, reassuring him that she genuinely loved reading, even if it started under such sad circumstances. She explained that she was trying to be a good girl, foolishly hoping that if she behaved well enough, her mother might come back one day. Looking back now, she admits she was naive, but even so, Curoya could tell that no amount of smiling could fully hide the sadness in her eyes, and that same sadness is what he saw on her face again today. Later, they sit together on a park bench, and Shiramori continues, explaining that she doesn't blame Kazumi for anything because less than a year after the divorce, her mother remarried and was already pregnant. As soon as the words leave her mouth, she briefly wonders if that new man was the reason her parents split up in the first place, but she quickly gives her brain a cease and desist order from going down that path. Instead, she apologizes to Curoya for turning their date gloomy, clearly trying to downplay everything. Curoya asks if she normally meets Kazumi, and Shiramori explains that they do meet occasionally along with their mom, but those meetings are always unbearably awkward for her. Since her mom is nearby today, Curoya wonders if it is okay for her to just leave like that, but she admits she can't face her mother without her boss vest. Listening to all this, Curoya feels a heavy ache in his chest, and seeing how she carries something so painful alone while putting on a brave face for others makes him feel helpless. Without thinking, he pulls her into a tight embrace, startling her completely, and he tells her that she is a very kind person, but she immediately doubts him, insisting that she is actually calculating on the inside. She also claims her kindness is just a mask she wears because she is afraid of clashing with others. Wanting to do for her what she once did for him during his darkest days, Curoya tells her not to say bad things about the person he likes, and an awkward silence follows as he keeps his hand on her shoulder and stands a little too close. But his courage trips over itself, and he fails to make any bold move, and Shiramori teases him for always stopping halfway, leaving him grumpy and embarrassed. Then, without warning, she pulls him into an embrace, and Curoya freezes as she finally breaks down in tears, recalling the day her mother left to buy milk and never returned, and her father, who was always too busy to pay attention to her. She also thinks about her friends who expect her to be available like a customer service hotline, and how lonely she has felt despite pretending to have everything together. Yet somehow, a single reassurance from Curoya makes all that emptiness fade away. She is still enjoying his warmth when she suddenly jerks back, surprised, as Curoya grabs her tightly, startling her. Not long after their park moment, reality reminds them that the universe hates romance by making them miss their train, and with no other choice, they settle in to wait for the next one, as an awkward silence dense enough to be classified as a natural disaster immediately settles between them. Curoya's brain replays their hug on loop while his courage bar flashes critically low, and he wonders how to give her a gift. But at the same time, Shiramori is also having an internal meltdown, as she desperately thinks about how to properly convey her feelings without combusting on the spot. Fortunately, Curoya manages to break the silence first by giving her a 1-month anniversary gift, and she opens it with anticipation to find a small white bear keychain inside, which she immediately finds cute, though she has no idea why he picked it. Curoya hurriedly explains that he based it on their Othello games and chose it because he wanted the gift to represent something they share. But while she appreciates the sentiment, her confusion remains until he pulls out a matching black keychain, causing everything to finally click in her head. The realization hits her all at once, and she immediately switches to teasing him, pointing out that he normally hates matching items, and Curoya panics as he threatens to take the gift back, but Shiramori refuses, declaring her ownership over it. She happily thanks him, apologizing for not preparing anything in return, but Curoya tells her that spending the day with her is already enough for him, and Shiramori goes into internal dance mode, forcing her to turn away for a secret victory. Convinced she has somehow secured the ultimate green flag, Shiramori decides it is only fair to return the favor with a memorable gift of her own, so she suddenly grabs his face and leans in close, instantly destroying his expectations by squishing his cheek like tofu instead of doing the deed. Curoya, who has already emotionally logged out for the day, does not even bother reacting as she continues to knead his face like stress relief dough while laughing at his misery. Just when she thinks she has won again, he suddenly looks her straight in the eye, remarking that her childish side is amazing. The unexpected compliment leaves her flustered, and she quickly tries to recover from the shock by insisting that she is quite mature, but he points out that she clearly enjoys teasing people, and her childish side becomes obvious when she looks happy to see them panic in real time. For a brief moment, Curoya feels like he just landed an insane home run by shutting her up completely, but she immediately makes a comeback by saying that her childish side is something she only shows him. Later, they arrive back at the train station where they met earlier in the day, and Curoya immediately prepares to part ways, but Shiramori reminds him that the proper gentleman's move is to offer to walk his girlfriend home first. She then teases him as usual by leaning in too close, hinting that she wants them to stay together longer. Although flustered, Curoya also says he feels the same way and agrees to walk her home. On the walk home, Shiramori stares longingly at him, secretly pleased that he is walking her home even though she had to tease him into it because she was too shy to ask him outright. Out of nowhere, Curoya holds her hand, catching her completely off guard, but she welcomes it with happiness as they continue walking side by side. When they finally arrive at her house, she thanks him for walking her home, and Curoya turns to leave, but as she watches him walk away, a flood of emotions hits her all at once as she reflects on how much has changed in just 1 month of their trial relationship. Seeing how bold he has become, especially after giving her the matching keychain, she decides it is finally her turn to step up, and without hesitation, she runs after him in full classic K-drama style, forcing him to turn around in confusion as she prepares to explain the real reason she suggested the trial relationship in the first place. Just as Shiramori is about to finally confess the truth behind the trial relationship, the universe plays a cheap joke on her when Curoya's phone rings, completely ruining the moment, and seeing that it is a call from his mom, he asks Shiramori if they can continue tomorrow, but she simply tells him to think about the day they started dating, giving him a brand new mental side quest. The next day, Curoya sits alone in the club room, flipping through his memories like burger patties on a grill, hoping one of them finally cooks into an answer, and he revisits everything from the day they met to the smallest details of their trial relationship. But no matter how hard he thinks, nothing clicks. Ever since their last date, he has been plagued by selective insomnia, and now his brain is almost deep-fried from thinking. Just as his soul begins planning an early retirement, Shiramori suddenly appears behind him and apologizes for keeping him waiting, nearly launching his spirit out of his body. She immediately asks if he has figured out the answer to her assignment, but Curoya informs her that he came up empty, so she drops him a hint, telling him to remember what happened before she came into the club room that day. He quickly rewinds his memory to that day and finally recalls that he was having one of his usual personal monologues out loud that day, and in the heat of the moment, he had wished they could start dating. The realization that she was eavesdropping on him that day hits him like truck gun, and Shiramori reveals that she heard his voice from the hallway that day and peeked at him quietly from behind, only to see him practicing how to ask her out. But when she entered the club room, he instantly switched into tough guy mode, which slightly annoyed her. She adds that she found it so ridiculous, and at that point, she decided to make the first move. That single explanation shatters what remains of Curoya's dignity, as he realizes that she saw him at his absolute clown moment, and right there, he wishes the ground would open up and accept him as a permanent resident. But before he can emotionally recover, she casually asks whether they should end the trial period, causing his lungs to forget their job. She adds that if he had simply asked her out that day, she would have accepted immediately without dragging things out. And hearing this, Curoya is hit with overwhelming regret for every ounce of courage he did not have. But he quickly second-guesses himself, suspecting this could just be another one of her elaborate teasing schemes. However, the serious expression on her face convinces him that this is not another joke. Shiramori then tells him she wants to step up the same way he has been doing for her over the past month, and bluntly asks whether he hated dating her during the trial period. The question sends Curoya spiraling as memories flood his mind, from their shared taste in books to the childish, shy, and vulnerable sides of her he has seen. And after getting lost in that mental slideshow, he blurts out with force that there is no way he could ever hate her after getting to know her so deeply. But before he can ramble further, Shiramori stops him and tells him to confess to her like he practiced that day. Although caught off guard by her request, Curoya is still surprised to see her so nervous for the first time, and realizing how much courage it took for her to be so blunt, he decides to be a man for once. Even though he would rather disappear than confess, he immediately apologizes for making her wait so long. And just like he did alone back then, he confesses his love, asking her to officially be his girlfriend. Rather than accepting immediately and sparing his remaining sanity, Shiramori takes her sweet time to tease him first for looking like a wet puppy during the confession. And after letting him marinate in embarrassment, she finally breaks into a bright smile and confesses her love for him as well, asking him to be her boyfriend. Curoya, ever the drama queen, becomes so emotionally overwhelmed, prompting Shiramori to up things a notch by leaning in closer, pushing him into full panic mode. and for a brief moment, he wonders if this is another one of her pranks. But this time, she closes the distance completely, officially clearing first base after 20 episodes of build-up. From that day onward, Curoya begins his first official relationship ever with a girl who is completely out of his league, and they live happily ever after, well after Curoya completes his Cupid mission for Anne. Thanks for watching Curoya's Awkward Moments. Leave a comment below if you have ever panicked on a date like Curoya.